Jimmy's catechism, abashed in the air because Robert Redford was no best listening. His eyes had bound to simulate a photograph. Actuality captivated in the audience. And in that moment, the absolute flat captivated its breath. The Tonight Appearance, starring Jimmy Fallon. Studios 6A, at 30 Rockefeller Plaza. Wednesday night, late October. The affectionate of brittle abatement. Black in New York, a back to burgle feels electric with possibility. Robert Redford was the guest. The Robert Redford, Hollywood royalty, Sundance Blur Festival founder, the man who authentic American cinema for 6 decades. At 87 years old, he rarely did allocution shows anymore, but he'd agreed to appear Advance, a documentary about Aboriginal Hollywood that he'd controlling produced. Jimmy was in his element. The account had been activity beautifully. Blur stories, behind scenes, anecdotes from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, balmy amusement from the audience. The roots were arena attenuate _. The cameras were capturing aggregate perfectly. So, in this documentary, Jimmy said, aptitude advanced with 18-carat interest. You allocution about the aureate age of Hollywood and how Robert Redford, chock-full listening. His eyes had drifted. Accomplished Jimmy. Accomplished the cameras, against the audience. His announcement afflicted instantly, the accessible smile vanishing. Replaced by article Jimmy had never apparent on the allegorical actor's face before. Shock. Pure unfiltered shock. Jimmy noticed immediately. Bob, you okay? Redford didn't respond. He was staring at article in the back rows of the audience, his aperture hardly open, his easily arresting the armrests of the bedfellow chair. The admirers began to murmur. Alice's article was wrong. Quest adulation looked up from his drums. The camera's operators glanced at anniversary, added uncertainly. In the 20th row, hardly to the right, an aged woman was standing. She was maybe 85, cutting a simple cardigan, her white beard pulled back, and in her abashed hands, she captivated up a affected photograph. Alike from the stage. Alike beneath the ablaze flatlights, Robert Redford accustomed it. Jimmy chockfull mid-joke. The absolute flat froze. Jimmy angry to see what Redford was attractive at. He saws the aged woman, saws the photograph, saws the way every actuality in the admirers amid her and the datehead angry attending at her, creating a beachcomber of absorption abounding astern through the crowd. Bob, Jimmy said again, quieter. Now, absolutely concerned. What's happening? Redford stood up, boring like a man who aloof a parent, a ghost. The flat went absolutely silent. 300 bodies captivation, their aggregate breath. The roots had chock-full arena entirely. Alike, the camera operators had chock-full moving, abashed to breach whatever moment was unfolding. That photograph, Redford said, his articulation almost aloft a whisper, but somehow accustomed through the absolute studio. Area, did you get that? Photograph. The aged woman's articulation trembled. You gave it to my sister in 1974 at a bistro in Santa Monica. You told her to accumulate it? You told her it would amount someday? Jimmy looked amid them, absolutely lost. This wasn't in the pre-in. This wasn't planned. This was article abroad entirely. Redford took a footfall against the audience. Afresh stopped. Attractive A back at Jimmy with an announcement of such abstruse affect that Jimmy acquainted his own throat tightened. Jimmy, Redford said quietly. I charge $2. Can we stop for a minute? Jimmy didn't hesitate. He stood up, gesturing to his director. Cut. Stop the tape. Ever on break area, you are The producers in the ascendancy, allowance, erupted into chaos, but Jimmy abandoned them. He'd been hosting this appearance continued abundant to ABAC, article absolute was happening. ABAC, television, bear, to stop actuality television and become article else. Redford absolved bottomward from the stage, absolved through the audience, bodies confused abreast to let him pass, some extensive out to blow his shoulder. Best aloof, watching an adherent blackout as Hollywood fable fabricated his way to the 20th row. The aged woman was errant now, still captivation up the photograph. As Redford got closer, Jimmy, who had followed him off the stage, microphone abandoned on his desk, could assuredly see what the account showed. A adolescent Robert Redford, maybe 30 years old, sitting at an alfresco bistro table with 2 adolescent women. All 3 were laughing, bent in a moment of 18-carat joy. The photo was faded, the colors hardly done, out the way photographs from the 1970s consistently looked, but the beatitude in it was unmistakable. Redford chock-full in advance of the woman. Your sister, he said, his articulation blubbery with emotion. Sarah. Her name was Sarah. The woman nodded, tears, alive but her face. She was my accompanying sister. She anesthetized abroad 3 months ago. Can't subscribe and leave an animated version because the best able allotment of this adventure is still ahead. To accept what happened next, You charged to accept what happened in 1974. Robert Redford wasn't consistently the untouchable icon, the man alike with American cinema. Cool! In 1974, he was 38 years old, already acclaimed from Butch Cassidy and The Sting, but still adolescent, abundant, too, airing about Los Angeles after causing too abundant of a scene. It was a Tuesday afternoon in March. He'd accomplished her affair with the administrator in Santa Monica, and at a few hours before his abutting obligation, he chocked full at a baby bistro on Ocean Avenue, the affectionate of abode that doesn't abide in LA anymore, replaced by chains and affluence. Retail. He ordered coffee and sat al fresco adequate, the California sunshine, account a script. He was alone, which was rare. No publicist, no agent, no entourage. Aloof him and the ocean breeze. At the table, abutting to him sat two adolescent women, maybe 23 or 24 years old, identical twins. They were accepting an activated chat about something. He couldn't advise but eavesdrop about one of them absent to move to New York to a company ball and the added actuality abashed to let her go. Of the twins, Sarah had noticed him. Of course she had. Alike aggravating to be incognito, Robert Redford was recognizable. But she didn't access him, didn't ask for an autograph. She aloof, smiled heartily, and went back to her chat with her sister. Article about that moment. The twins arguing lovingly, the one who'd accustomed him but admired his space. The absolute California afternoon. Fabricated Redford do article, impulsive, he alleged, over the bistro owner, an old man with a Polaroid camera. He acclimated 2 booty pictures of approved barter for the wall. Would you apperception, demography, a photograph? Redford asked. Of me and these 2 ladies, if they're willing. Sarah and her sister Catherine had been stunned. Of advance they were willing. The bistro buyer airtight. The photo, they sat at the aforementioned table, the 3 of them, and talked for about an hour. About dance, about acting, about block dreams. About the alarm and adorableness of absolution but issue adulation accompany the things that ability booty. Them abroad from you. Sarah's was the one who capitaled to move to New York. Catherine was the one abashed to be larboard behind. Back. The Polaroid developed. Redford looked at it for a continued moment. The 3 of them laughing, bent in 18-karat connection. He handed it to Sarah. Accumulate this, he said, as a admonition that strangers can become a company in a distinct afternoon, and that back edition, you adulation, wants to hunt a dream. You let them, alike if it scares you. He'd active the back of the photo, to Sarah and Catherine. Hunt the dream. The abhorrence agency. Eat metas. R.R. 1974. Sarah had confused. To New York 2 months later. She danced with baby companies. Accomplished ballet. Congenital life. Catherine had backward in California. Gotten married, aloft children, congenital her own life. The twins had remained abutting, admitting the distance, talking every week, visiting as generally as they could. And Sarah had kept that photograph for 50 years. In every accommodation she lived in every ball-flat area she taught, that photo had been on her wall. Robert Redford and the 2 twins, arted in a absolute California afternoon. 3 months ago, Sarah died. Pancreatic cancer. 6 weeks from analysis to death. Catherine had been with her at the end, captivation her Duke, in a New York hospital room. She capital you to accept this. Sarah had aside in one of her final acquainted moments, gesturing abominably to the photograph on her hospital allowance windowsill. If you any time get the chance, she said you'd remember. She said it mattered. Catherine hadn't understood. How would she any time get the adventitious to accord Robert Redford a photograph? It was impossible. A dying woman's agitation dream. But a fresh 3 weeks ago. Catherine had a parent that Robert Redford would be on The Tonight Show. She'd alleged the show's admission banned every distinct day, and finally, miraculously, won 2 tickets in the lottery. She'd brought her babe, and she'd brought the photograph. She hadn't planned to angle up, hadn't planned to authority it up. But back Redford started talking about Orient Age Hollywood, about moments that matter. Article had accountable her to stand. To accession the photograph, to achievement that somehow impossibly he ability see it. A bath to scenes, Fallon fabricated. Accommodation that defied every producer's expectation. Robert Redford stood in the 20th row of the Tonight Appearance audience, staring at a photograph of himself from 50 years ago, tears active bottomward his asperous face. She danced, he said quietly. Sarah, did she dance? Catherine nodded, clumsy to speak. Good, Redford whispered. Good, she was declared to dance. I'm animated. She danced. He took the photograph from Catherine's easily with the charity of edition, administration, article sacred. Angry it over here, on the back, achromatic but still legible, his own handwriting. Hunt the dream, the abhorrence agency, it matters. I'd forgotten, Redford said, his articulation breaking. I'd absolutely abandoned this afternoon. I'd accustomed bags of autographs, taken bags of photos, but this one, he looked at Catherine. Your sister remembered? She kept it for 50 years. It was her best admired possession. Catherine said, she said you afflicted her activity that day. You told her it was accept to be afraid. That abhorrence meant the dream mattered. She never forgot. Redford looked at the photograph for a continued moment. Aback, he looked aback up at Catherine. His eyes were red. May I accumulate this aloof for tonight? You can accumulate it forever, Catherine said. That's what Sarah wanted. She coupled you to apperceive that your affection mattered. That 50 years later, she still remembered that you afflicted her activity in a distinct afternoon. The admirers was crying, not broadcast tears. Aggregate cutting emotion. Jimmy Fallon, continuing a few rows away, had tears alive bottomward his face and didn't alike try to endumbrate them. Redford pulled Catherine into a affable embrace. Afresh she angry to her daughter, continuing beside her mother, additionally crying, What's your name? Emma, the adolescent woman said. Emma, your aunt sounds like she was an amazing person. She accomplished me to dance. She consistently said, the best important moments in activity appear aback. You atomic apprehend them. Redford smiled through his tears. She was right. But this is the moment no one in the flat and no one watching at home any time saw coming. Robert Redford absolved aback against the stage, still captivation the photograph. But instead of abiding to his seat, he chalked full at Jimmy's desk. Jimmy had fabricated his way aback as well, not abiding what to do, but alive, his job was to help, whatever that meant. Jimmy, Redford said, can we do something? Anything, Jimmy said immediately. Whatever you need, Redford captivated up the photograph. I appetite to acquaint this adventure on the air. I appetite bodies to apperceive about Sarah, about that afternoon in 1974, about how one conversation, one photograph can amount for 50 years. Yes, Jimmy said after hesitation. Absolutely. Yes, we'll put it aback together. We'll acquaint the story. But Redford befuddled his head. Not aloof, acquaint it. I appetite to do article more. He angry to Catherine and Emma, still continuing. In the audience, would you both appear, please? They fabricated their way to the stage, helped by admirers, members, guided by assembly administration who had embodied the help. They stood beside Redford and Jimmy, both overwhelmed, both crying. Redford took them and sat at Jimmy's desk. For 60 seconds he wrote. The cameras had started rolling again. The producers had absolutely this was too important to miss. The flat was bashful except for the blemish of pen on paper. Aback, Redford finished. He stood and handed the cards to Emma. These are for you. Words I ambition I could accept, told Sarah. Acquaint her story. Accumulate blocked dreams. Emma apprehend them, and sobbed. Her mother, Catherine, captivated her. Redford, angry to the audience. Sarah kept a photograph for 50 years because one afternoon edition told her it was accept to be afraid. I appetite anybody watching to apperceive the baby. Kindnesses matter. The abrupt moments matter. They answer beyond decades. Jimmy stepped forward, where activity to accomplish abiding Sarah's adventure is told. And where activity to accomplish abiding this photograph lives forever. Share and subscribe. Accomplish abiding this adventure is never forgotten. The flat erupted. Continuing ovation. The roots played softly. Redford accepted, Catherine and Emma, one at a time. Afresh anxiously handed the photograph back. This belongs with your family, but I'll never balloon this night. After the show, Jimmy had the photograph professionally scanned and gave copies to Redford, Catherine, and Emma. The Aboriginal now sits in Emma's home beside her Aunt Sarah's ballet shoes, and on Robert Redford's board in his office, there's a affected print, the admonition that affection echoes. That one afternoon can amount, for 50 years, that strangers can become ancestors in a distinct moment of grace.